You see the timer?
Good evening. I'm Janine Wester, president of Empower Her of the Palm Beaches and a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Welcome to When We All Vote, Palm Beach County Voting Squad Candidates Forum. We hope you found each of our forums thus far informational and will help you make a good, sound decision during the August primaries. Tonight's forum will focus on the following races: Florida Congressional Candidate, District 18, Florida Congressional Candidate, District 20, Florida Congressional Candidate, District 21, Florida Congressional Candidate, District 22. Voting is a much bigger thing than we can ever imagine. It's bigger than one party, it's bigger than one candidate. It is a great feeling to be inspired by candidates and their vision to put forth a great effort, but it's by no means a prerequisite to casting a ballot. Voting gives you a say-so in the matter. It can always, and it can also be your way of saying that you care about your community and the people in it. Because of these reasons, more than 35 local nonpartisan organizations stand together, focusing on voter education and voting rights. I hope tonight's forum will continue to inspire you. From Amanda Jested.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Ms. Wester. My name is Mandy Jested. I'm a shareholder at the law firm Carlton Fields and a board member of the Women's Foundation of Florida, a partnering organization for this event. The Women's Foundation of Florida is a nonprofit founded in Palm Beach County, dedicated to empowering women and girls to be leaders so they can change the world. We invest in their ideas and encourage their leadership to positively affect the economic, political, and social status of women and girls across Florida. We provide committees who create programs in professional development, advocacy and policy, STEAM education for girls, and much more. We have two moderators this evening, and I have the pleasure of introducing them to you. First, Allyson Dupree Smith. Ms. Dupree Smith is an officer and senior account advisor of wealth management at the Northern Trust Company in Delray Beach. Ms. Dupree Smith was born and raised in Sanford, Florida. She received a Bachelor of Science degree from the Warrington School of Business at the University of Florida and a certification of financial planning from the American Bankers Program at Emory University. She currently serves on the Community Relations Committee for the Raymond F. Kravis Center for the Performing Arts. She is a member of the West Palm Beach chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., where she has served as president and is chair of several of the organization's community service programs. Nelson Baez is a trial attorney with the law firm of Lytle, Ryder, Smith, Ivy, and Fronrath. He focuses his practice on assisting negligence victims. As a native Spanish speaker whose family is from Puerto Rico, he heads Lytle Ryder's Spanish department. Mr. Baez graduated from Stetson Law School. Since then, he has tried over 80 jury trials. He has been named by national trial lawyers as a top 40 under 40, among other accolades. Mr. Baez serves on the board of directors of the Guatemalan Maya Center in Lake Worth. He is also a former president of the Palm Beach County Hispanic Bar Association and a current board member of the Palm Beach County Justice Association. On behalf of the Women's Foundation of Florida and all the organizations responsible for this event, I thank you for being here. Civil rights icon Congressman John Lewis said, "The vote is precious. It is the most powerful, nonviolent tool we have in a democratic society, and we must use it." With that, I turn the forum over to the moderators, Ms. Dupree Smith and Mr. Baez.
Thank you very much. And good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Candidates Forum, featuring the candidates in the Florida primary election for the United States House of Representative races. Pursuant to the United States Constitution, the House of Representatives makes up and passes federal laws. The House is one of Congress's two chambers, the other being the Senate, and part of the federal government's legislative branch. The number of voting representatives in the House is fixed by law at no more than 435 members, who proportionally represent the population of the 50 states. Tonight, we will hear from the candidates for the 4 United States House of Representative districts relevant to Palm Beach County: House District 18, 20, 21, and 22. These candidates will appear on the ballot for the August 18th primary election. Tonight's goal is to gain some insight into the candidates' qualifications, character, and platforms. Note that all candidates for the races were invited.
Here are the rules for tonight's forum. For each race, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We will then move to a question and answer block. All candidates in a race will be asked the same pre-screened questions, and they can choose not to answer. If they do answer, each answer will be limited to 1 minute. After that, we will ask questions submitted by the audience. If you have a question, please submit it in the question and answer section on Zoom or in the Facebook comment section. At the conclusion of all questions, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. We will have a timer displayed for each candidate to review. Please note that we will have a facilitator monitoring the audio. So candidates, please be respectful and mindful of the time restrictions to avoid being muted.
We will now begin with the first group of candidates, which consists of the candidates for House District 21. Florida's 21st Congressional District is located in southeastern Florida and includes Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, Boynton Beach, and Delray Beach. Due to the number of candidates running for House District 21, we will split the races by party affiliation. The first group of candidates is vying for the Democratic seat in the primary election. The candidates in attendance tonight are Representative Lois Frankel and Guido Weiss. We will now begin with opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Representative Lois Frankel.
Well, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'm Lois Frankel, a current member of Congress from Palm Beach County. Well, let me start by saying I've learned the most in my life from my 94-year-old mother, who still gives me advice every day. And I have a wonderful son, a grown son, who does not take my advice every day. He was born and raised in West Palm Beach. I watched him go through the public schools here. He went off to war, returned here. He's a small businessman and has given me a beautiful grandson. I've had the privilege of serving South Floridians as a state legislator, mayor of West Palm Beach, and now as your member of Congress. And I think that gives me the experience needed to meet today's extraordinary challenges. In Congress, I'm appointed to the important Appropriations Committee that funds the work of the federal government. In that capacity, I've helped to advance funding for so many issues important to my constituents, like medical research, veteran support, healthcare, and a clean environment. As co-chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus, I've become one of the leading voices for the advancement of women and girls in the United States and around the world, fighting for equal pay, family-friendly business policies, safety, and access to full reproductive care. My focus these days have been on COVID relief, with tens of millions of people out of work, state and local governments with huge budget gaps, millions of Americans infected, 158,000 tragic deaths. I'm fighting with like-minded colleagues to bring back more relief to all the people here in Palm Beach County and around the country. Time is of the essence. Democrats passed relief 12 weeks ago, and I'm urging my Republican colleagues in the Senate to do the same. We must all work together to help save lives and livelihoods. Again, I'm just privileged to be with you tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Representative Frankel. We will next hear from Mr. Weiss. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of the people associated with When We All Vote, all the affiliates, Janine, Mandy, Allyson, Nelson, and all the others. And I really like this project. So my name is Guido Weiss. I'm originally from Wellington, graduated high school in Delray Beach, and I have 4 generations of family right here in Palm Beach County. I joined the Navy from here. I enlisted, and now I'm a commissioned United States Navy intelligence officer. I'm the first candidate ever in this district who's not funded and sponsored by the companies polluting our district and the companies raising our healthcare costs. I spent the last 4 years in Congress working as a congressional advisor with 2 members of Congress in the Democratic Party and the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, I have to say something. I'm challenging Congresswoman Frankel, and I have to say she's done great work. Particularly, I've always been impressed by her focus on women and the LGBTQ community. But my time in Congress has gotten me to want more for our community here in Palm Beach County, less special interests and more community-based leadership for our community and the generations of family we love right here. Now we're going through historic times, and we have a lot of people in Palm Beach County that we must uplift. We need to end systemic racism, and we have social justice change on the horizon. But if we want to bring our community up, we must be in our community. And that's something that I want to do as the future member of Congress for this district. Right now, our constituent services office is not in our district, it's in another member of Congress's district. And our member of Congress is frequently not in the communities that need it most, and I want to change that. Second, we've got COVID. We're sitting right now in a time when congressional staff should be in our district community services office attending to those who need it most. Unfortunately, even as a candidate, we have people that reach out to me every single day saying, I reached out to Frankel's office, didn't get a response. Rubio's office even gave me a response. And I've seen Congresswoman Frankel's congressional taxpayer staff doing political work around the county, and that's unacceptable. So I'm gonna bring us back to our core values. Third is Medicare for all. I'm fighting for Medicare for all because right now we're in a situation where we're the only developed country where the health rate is declining, the life expectancy. If you wanna lower healthcare costs and improve healthcare, you don't take money from the companies increasing our healthcare costs. I'm going to take my Navy, local, and congressional experience to Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. So now let's turn to the questions. I'll ask the same question of each candidate, and the candidates will then have 1 minute to respond. Please be mindful of the clock. There will be no rebuttal, and please wait for the timer to begin. I will start off with Mr. Weiss with the first question. Some of the benefits of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, would allow parents to provide insurance for their children until the age of 26 and would prevent insurance companies from denying coverage for those with pre-existing conditions. By 2016, the uninsured population was nearly cut in half, and an estimated 20 to 24 million additional people had insurance. Since then, the Trump administration has worked to challenge many components of the act, including but not limited to challenging the individual mandate in the U.S. Supreme Court. Do you think the Affordable Care Act should be expanded or dismantled? Give specific examples of what you would propose to either expand it or to replace it. Indicate how you would pay for your plan. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. No, we should not be taking away benefits of the Affordable Care Act, but we should be transitioning from the Affordable Care Act to Medicare for all. Right now, even with the Affordable Care Act, which was a major step forward in insuring Americans, there are still millions of Americans uninsured. We are still the only country in the world where families are going bankrupt at a very high percentage due to the cost of medical bills. Now, this is a pretty intense question, so I'm gonna get right to it. We see that countries that have universal healthcare system, most of them have actually a better debt to GDP ratio than we do. So there's kind of a facade going around that it actually would cost more. It would actually bring long-term government expenditures down if we could bring pharmaceutical prices down, if we could negotiate Medicare with pharmaceutical companies. And I would do this with putting back in place the taxes that were cut by the Trump administration. I know I'm coming up on my time. I have to say, Representative Frankel has been great on this and has been opposing the Trump administration's efforts to destroy the ACA.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. Representative Frankel, your response.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I believe healthcare should be a right. It's not just for a privileged few. It is very difficult to have the kind of quality, good life that people deserve unless they have access to quality health care. I think for me, I have signed on to legislation that would provide a Medicare for all. With that said, I certainly support Joe Biden and what will be his efforts to improve and expand the Affordable Care Act. We can do that in a number of ways. We can have a Medicare option on the legislation. We absolutely must lower the cost of prescription drugs, and we can do that. And we have actually in the House passed legislation to allow negotiation of prescription drug costs by Medicare. That would cover everybody who used a prescription drug, and really enforce and have very strong incentives and penalties for pharmaceutical companies that refuse to negotiate.
Thank you very much, Representative
You're
Frankel.
welcome. You're welcome.
We'll now turn to our next question. Should Congress raise taxes on corporations in order to pay for much needed improvements in our local infrastructure or to balance the budget? Representative Frankel, you'll get to go first and you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say, balancing the budget is not a concept that I accept at all. Federal government has to respond to lots of emergencies and the needs of people. With that said, there was a corporate tax cut put in by the Trump administration when he first got in, over a trillion, almost $1.3 trillion in tax cuts that were unfair and unnecessary. And I would support reversing that in order to fund things like childcare, healthcare, better healthcare and access to aging services. So I think there's a lot we can do, better ways that we can handle those taxes.
Thank you, Representative Frankel. Mr. Weiss, your response.
Yes, we should raise the corporate tax rate. Yes, the Trump administration did, as Representative Frankel say, put a $1.3 trillion tax break to the wealthiest in our country. And you can even see with the current COVID response package, much of that money has gone to corporations that has been unregulated. As Representative Frankel said, we need more investment in our communities, whether it's healthcare, childcare, other types of services for our community infrastructure. We need that funding. And going back to one of the most important issues, medical healthcare, we have models out there that work. We have the solutions out there that work. But in order to get there, we need more representatives in Congress who are not sponsored by the corporations advocating for these types of tax cuts. And that's what I'm looking to present Palm Beach County. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. The next question we'll start off with you, Mr. Weiss. The House of Representatives passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act 2020, which included provisions to overhaul qualified immunity for law enforcement, prohibitions on racial profiling on the part of law enforcement, and a ban on no-knock warrants in federal drug cases. The Senate declined to take up this measure. Are you in favor or against the bill? What changes would you propose to secure bipartisan support for policing reform? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you again. I am for those proposals. I'm very much in favor of that. That was a positive thing that happened. Unfortunately, it was too reactionary. There's a lot of issues that we know way before George Floyd are a problem. Actually, I'm a Navy Security Force officer, and I saw that video, and Navy Security Force member, and I was trained to do the opposite of what those officers did. But to get progress on this issue, we need campaign finance reform. There is a prison system that is funding members of Congress and including funding the president that encourage these types of behaviors in this systemic issue. We need to repeal and replace the 1994 crime bill. We need to end private prisons, and we need to end corporate finance of politicians.
Thank you. Representative Frankel, your response with your position on the bill and what changes, if any, you would make.
Well, thank you. First of all, I voted for the bill already. I think it's a very good bill, the Floyd Justice bill. Listen, I think anybody who watched that video of George Floyd's brutal murder was offended. It was horrifying. It's sad. And I just want to say that I am proud of, especially of all the young people who have protested across this country to raise their voices for justice. And I believe that the Democrats in the House responded quickly with a good bill. I think the Senate needs to come to the table. They're not, until they offer something, I'm not going to try to negotiate. I don't have faith that they're going to do much, but I just have to say this. This forum tonight the purpose of this forum is to get to know the candidates and to encourage voting. And the best thing that you can do to get some of these policies across is to elect the right people.
Thank you. Florida has become a hotspot for the COVID-19 incidents.
Mhm.
Are you in favor of a national plan to combat the virus and/or a national mask mandate to reduce the spread? Why or why not would you support such measures? And what steps should be taken to encourage public confidence in the government's response and data collection? We'll start with Representative Frankel.
Thanks for the question. Well, the answer is very simple there. Yes, I am for. I think if we would have had a national response, we'd have a lot less infection and a lot less deaths. And I do believe we should have a national effort for mandatory mask wearing, because without a vaccine now, it is personal responsibility and respect for others that can keep this infection down. And it's a proven method. I'll be respectful and just say I'm very disappointed in the lack of leadership of the president. I guess I could describe it in other ways, but our president and our governor has failed us all. And so what I say to everybody is, arm yourself in a way, wear those masks, socially distance, wash your hands, be respectful of yourself and others, and we will see better days.
Thank you, Representative Frankel. And Mr. Weiss, your response to the COVID incidents.
Thank you very much. So the other day, our campaign team went to volunteer at food distribution in Lake Worth, and the line was all the way from downtown Lake Worth almost to Lake Worth High School, and it was miles long. So right now the government's at an impasse. We need another bill, but we do need a national effort on masks. We do need a much larger bill to sustain people during these times. Right now, the Florida, as the representative was saying, we're disappointed in Florida. The unemployment in Florida, what people receive is certainly poverty level. The federal one's a bit better, but we need another package. And a lot of these benefits are expiring, and we need to get at it right away. We need to also build trust. There's items like contact tracing. There's a bunch of congressional bills out there that build trust within the community and the representatives and the federal government entities. And it's really hard to build trust in this polarized time, because I was just at a poll trying to explain myself to voters who are making their choices. And there was an entire group of people from the other side without wearing masks, all the candidates together in a group. And we need to show leadership.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. So that ends the question portion. We're going to turn to our closing statements here. The candidates will have 1 minute to provide a closing statement, and we'll start with Mr. Weiss.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, again, thank you very much for this forum. Thank you, Congresswoman Frankel, for your attendance in this forum as well. I appreciate the open process. Unfortunately, I could not get in a debate with the Congresswoman, but this has been a good time to speak side by side. I promised to the community that I will be and maintain that status as somebody who's bringing positive change to our community, from our community experienced in Washington, D.C., and will never have special interests telling something in my ear to do this or to do that. I will be as transparent as possible. I will move our congressional district to a place where our congressional office, to a place where community members can walk to their member of Congress or walk to a constituent caseworker and meet with them. I'm going to work very hard with every single community, regardless of background or political party, to be the best representative of Palm Beach County we could have in Congress. I'm very transparent. Send me an email, text the number on my website, get in contact with me at any time. I appreciate all of you out there listening. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. And Representative Frankel, your closing statement.
Thank you all again for this forum. Look, these are tough times, and Donald Trump is only making it worse. He suggested we ingest disinfectants to stop COVID-19. I fight for real medical research, for treatments and cures, and quality health care for all of us, and not just a privileged few. Strengthening the lives of seniors by protecting Medicare and Social Security, and fighting to lower the price of prescription drugs. Trump is trying to shut down the post office, and I fight to fully fund it and to allow vote by mail for all the voters. He wants to drill oil off Florida's coast, and I'm fighting to fund projects that reduce the carbon in our air. And while the president is dividing us, I'm dedicated to providing relief to all our workers and small businesses so that in the future we have an economy that works for all of us And I'm proud to be in the fight for social justice so all our children can see America's promise fulfilled. I'm going to go back to Washington, clean up the mess that Trump made when he comes back here for good. I'm Lois Frankel, and I promise I'm always going to be on your side.
Thank you, Representative Frankel, and thank you to the candidates. I'm now going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Allyson, to hear from the Republican candidates vying for this district's seat.
Thank you, Nelson. The candidates in attendance for the District 21 Republican seat are Christian Acosta, Elizabeth Felton, Aaron Scanlon, Reba Sherrill, and Michael Velarde. We will now start with opening statements. Again, each candidate will have 2 minutes. We will begin with Mr. Acosta.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to all of the staff from When We All Vote for putting this on. I really appreciate it. As candidates, this exposure is very important to us because, especially in COVID, it's difficult to go and reach people. So this is very beneficial. Thank you. My name is Christian Acosta, and I'm running for the District 21 nomination. I am actually someone who grew up in this district. I went to middle school down in Boca Raton, and I went to Atlantic High School in Delray Beach. And now I live with my wife and my young daughter in Boynton Beach. My parents have been here for 2 decades. They own a small business. So I really love Palm Beach County. It's where I grew up as a young adult, and then I ended up going to the University of Florida. So I want to be able to give back to my community. What I see right now and what bothers me is I don't think that our community is being represented by someone who is willing to bring benefits home to the community, and that bothers me. I understand that in Washington you have to do some political things, but you shouldn't be all about national level politics. You should be able to say the specific thing that you did for your district, the specific benefits you brought. And I don't think right now that's something we can really say. And that has to change. So I'm going to be focused 100% on making sure that we have benefits here for our small businesses, for our schools, for our community colleges. I'm currently a professor at Palm Beach State College, so I can see firsthand the strength that our community college system can give to our students, especially in reducing debt. And that's something we need to support. You know, when was the last time that our representative and really the country as a whole put an effort into beefing up our education system, specifically vocational programs in high school and community college systems? That hasn't happened in a while, and I think it should. I want to see us support small businesses that are like the lifeblood of South Florida. I want to see targeted tax breaks that focus on the small business and not just any size business, really on small retail shops, things that we like to go to every single day, but we don't always see being helped. I want to make sure that we can focus on bringing new businesses to South Florida, on revitalizing the economy, and really on doing a focus to help the local community here that I love so much and that I want to serve. So my name is Christian Acosta. I'm an engineer. I just want to solve problems, and I would be honored if you give me a chance as your candidate for District 21. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta. Next, we will hear from Ms. Felton.
Hi, I'm Liz Felton. Thank you so much for giving us this forum to talk to you about our platforms. I am a business owner here in Palm Beach County. I hold state and federal licensing for my business, and I am all too familiar with the red tape that can inhibit business growth here in our county. And as we know, our small businesses provide jobs and contribute to our local economy. I am so sorry, I have chickens screaming in the background. I hope that you guys can't hear those or they're not too distracting. So I am not a career politician. There is something within my business that I see as a huge problem for personal property rights as it pertains to animals right now, but that will lay legal foundation for removal of property rights for other things moving on down the line. That is only one concern. I have many other things on my platform, and I hope you'll take a look at my website to get into that. I do want to make note, as I said, I'm not a career politician. I'm not taking big money from anybody. My loyalty is to you, my neighbors, the people that live and work in my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Our next opening statement is from Mr. Scanlon.
Hi, thank you very much for having this. This is a great forum. Like Christian said, we needed another way to be able to reach out to the people, and this has been a great format. Thank you so much for all your efforts. Just a little bit about myself. I am a United States Air Force veteran. We are running for U.S. Congress here in District 21. As a veteran of the Air Force, I was tasked with having a top secret clearance guarding our nuclear weapons and our nuclear arsenal. During that time, I had to deal with a lot of diplomats and especially foreign nationals and on foreign soil and foreign governments. So I had the experience of working with people from all over the world, coming to an agreed consensus. I'm also a retired police officer where I was a hostage negotiator and 23 years in the service. I served honorably and faithfully in both Wisconsin and down here in Palm Beach County. Having the experience of being a hostage negotiator, I was able to come to a common ground with people who are in crisis. Right now, our country is facing problems that it hasn't faced in a very, very long time. With the civil unrest that's going on, the COVID-19 pandemic, we're all having to change our patterns and ways of doing things to make it work. One of the main issues is the breakdown within our own government. Right now, we have people on the left that are strong-arming our government and trying to push their own agenda. And to me, you need to be able to work with both sides. They had a perfectly good agreement that everybody agreed to with the first stimulus package, and then suddenly they came in with a completely different stimulus package and then forced it down the Republicans' throats. We need to have a government that works together, and we need to stop bickering back and forth about it. And for me, having that experience and getting that things done, I'll be able to do that in Congress. Again, thank you so much. I'm Aaron Scanlon. I'm running for Congress in District 21.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. We will hear from Ms. Cheryl next.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. My name is Reba Cheryl. I'm a mom and I have 2 adult daughters. I have been in Palm Beach. I moved to Palm Beach, Florida 7 years ago from Tennessee. I have been a humanitarian for more than 40 years. I have done humanitarian projects all over the world. I've also been a global businesswoman for over 30 years. My specialty is oncology, hematology. And I've had a wellness business that I have operated for decades. And nothing else brings me more joy and satisfaction than helping people to regain their health and wellness. We have a big problem with unemployment right now because of the global shutdowns that have taken place. And here in South Florida, it's no different. I have some proposals of how to get people back to work. We need to reopen America. And also because of my wellness background in my 30 plus years in the healthcare industry, focusing on wellness, we need to change our focus from a sick care industry to a wellness industry and to actually teach people how to prevent disease and how to reverse it. I'm all for taking care of people with pre-existing problems, but we need to get them back in full health. My big push is to fight fraud and corruption. It's locally and in DC and around the world. And we must restore our freedom and liberty. Our Constitution has been trampled. I am for the people, government by the people, and of the people. And I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Our last opening statement will come from Mr. Velarde.
There we go.
We don't hear you, Mr. Velarde.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am Mike Velarde, and I'm running to be your congressional representative in Florida's 21st Congressional District. This election is about one thing, and that's America's future greatness. There are those throughout America making a lot of noise seeking to disrupt and destroy America, as you see from the cities in Portland and whatnot, and everything that we've worked for. One of the ways that they are most effective is by dividing us and distracting us, by having us focus on other matters and questioning what really will shape America. Our future and America's greatness will shine if we only focus on what really matters. And those 4 things are labor, government, business, and education. If we focus on these issues and put partisan politics aside, America will shine brightly. I am here today to seek the congressional nomination to bring unity to the parties, to keep the House focused on America's greatness and get something productive done. We must stop the distractions and the divisions. I am running on a platform to do the following. One is to make Social Security tax-free. Currently, Americans are being double taxed on their Social Security. When they take the tax from you, you get no tax benefit. When you receive it, there's a tax of 85% of the benefit if you have a pension or anything over like $35,000 a year. I think that's wrong. It's nothing more than your money being returned to you, and it should be tax-free to help our senior citizens. Secondly, I think we need term limits because there's too much political corruption in politics. Third, unemployment insurance. Currently with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of people have received unemployment. Well, those benefits are taxable. And as a result of being taxable, these poor people are going to be hit with a big tax bill from the IRS. I think that's wrong. I think we need to make it tax exempt because it's supposed to be insurance and not income. Fourthly, as a former IRS agent, I was 22 years as a criminal investigator. I think we should reform the IRS. And then I've run out of time, so I'll hit on my other issues later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Velarde. Let's move on to our questions. Again, the same question will be asked of all candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. There will be no rebuttal. Please wait for the timer before you begin. Our first question will be addressed first to Ms. Felden. In 2016, Republican Representative Carlos Curbelo and Democratic Representative Ted Deutsch found the House of Representatives Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus with the goal of addressing the economic and environmental risks related to climate change. Generally, Democrat candidates have placed a higher priority on climate change than their Republican counterparts. With climate models showing the likelihood of more intense hurricanes, droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events, what policy do you propose to balance economic growth while protecting the climate for the benefit of Floridians? Ms. Felton?
So sometimes you have to know what you don't know. What I can tell you is this: I'm not a scientist. I have read the arguments on both sides, and both sides are compelling. You know, one says that we are absolutely destroying our environment and that we are responsible for climate change. The other side says, and these are also scientists, that this is a cycle that follows, and no matter what we do, we're going to have climate change. So sitting here in this spot, what I would do is a lot more research and be open, regardless of whether somebody's a Republican or a Democrat, to hearing what solutions they have. I'm a critical thinker. I will take apart any bill that comes in front of me, including something on climate change. I'm open to listen. I do not have an immediate package solution. I have a lot of solutions for a lot of things. You happen to pick the one topic. I don't have it in a nutshell, but I would critically think it out, and it wouldn't matter which party the suggestion came from.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Again, candidates, please indicate if you'd like me to repeat the question. I will certainly happy to do that. Our next response will come from Mr. Scanlon.
I thank you. Yes, Florida's waterways and our own ecosystems are one of the biggest attractions for Floridians and for tourism. So it doesn't only provide for tourist jobs, it also provides for people to actually provide for their families. So the jobs that are on our waterways, the jobs that come from our waterways, it's very important that we take care of the waterways especially. And right now there are new bills that were passed that are helping to clean up the waterways. And what we would do is we would just continue to fight for South Florida's water. One of the biggest things, especially with climate control, is what goes into the grounds and what goes into our waterways is also an issue. And when we have problems where we have two sides that are arguing two different things, we do need to get more information available to that, and not biased information. We need information from people who have actually no agenda but to help clean up the waterways. And with that information, then we can do something more appropriate and more robust to help solve these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Mr. Velarde, you may respond.
Please repeat the question.
With climate models showing the likelihood of more intense hurricanes, droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events, what policy do you propose to balance economic growth while protecting the climate for the benefit of Floridians?
Thank you for asking that question. Well, I used to be a former Ford Motor Company executive, and I currently own some Ford Motor Company stock. And they put a lot of money and effort into renewable energies and electric vehicles. And I'm a big proponent of giving tax incentives for electric vehicles. I was one of the first people that bought a Prius, for instance. And I think if we go that route, as opposed to, I had a Prius and then I had a hybrid, several Camry hybrids. I think by using incentives, tax incentives, instead of these big carbon taxes that make everybody poor, bankrupts the economy, I'm for incentives that are going to switch from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. And that's what we're seeing now. A lot of these big companies like Ford have put billions of dollars into renewable energies and hybrid cars. And I think you're going to see a lot more of it, just like Tesla. So that's what I would be for.
Thank you, Mr. Velarde. Ms. Cheryl, you may respond.
Yes, thank you. So a lot of the problems that we see today really have their base of beginning after World War II. There was a Project Paperclip where they brought over the Nazi scientists and they brought with them all these chemicals. Because of the pollution and the toxins that have been put in our environment, in the air, in the water, in our clothes, the furniture, everything, it has caused a disruption in our climate, in our environment. We need to clean up these pollutants out of our materials that surround us in our everyday life. This will not only improve our health, but also help the climate. The climate will always be changing. We know this from core samples in the ice caps that have been studied over the decades. So we can expect it to change. We need to have disaster preparedness so that we are ready at the ready. And we need to bring forth these technologies that have been covered up, such as free energy from Nikola Tesla and others. So we need to embrace these new technologies and utilize them.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl.
Thank you.
Lastly, Mr. Acosta, you may respond.
Well, thank you. I think it's a really important question. I'm actually a nuclear engineer. That's what I studied at University of Florida. And I worked in the nuclear industry for 8 years. So I've been working with clean energy for most of my professional career. The bottom line for me is I don't like all the political bickering about, climate change. My question is, what do we do? I think we should all agree that we need to do something. And my answer is, whatever we do, we shouldn't be focusing on throwing people out of work or raising effectively your utility bill, because utility bills hit low-income people harder than they hit anybody else. So how can we move forward? I think one of the most important things for Florida, and one thing I would be championing in Congress, is development and usage of more residential solar power. We have a lot of small businesses that are flourishing here in Florida, putting residential solar panels on roofs. We have a solar panel factory in Jacksonville. It's literally an industry that we should be the leaders of. It creates jobs. It lowers the peak demand on FPL. That actually helps the utility, and it really helps us lower our footprint. I think by having incentive programs like that and helping individual citizens, we can have the biggest possible impact and help Florida a lot. And that's something I would really back.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta. And thank you all candidates for question 1. Let's move on to question 2. Mr. Scanlon, you will have the first opportunity to respond. What role should Congress take in working with states and the Federal Department of Education to make the public education system in America responsive to the changing needs of a 21st century economy and COVID-19? You have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, thank you. First of all, it's, our government's set up in a way that our states should be running themselves. However, we do have the federal government to oversee and assist the states in their efforts when they need it. So as far as role of government and role of Congress is to make sure that the states do have all the necessary resources that they need to handle any situation. Now, this is one of the pandemics that is it's new to everybody. Nobody's really experienced this in my lifetime. And being in the Air Force, I was also tasked with coming up with new ways to help out in emergency situations and think outside the box. We need to have people that are ready to go, ready to fire off at what we need to to help these states do what they need to do and have the utilities, have the equipment, and have the wherewithal to get things done and still get people into the classrooms.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Next to respond is Ms. Cheryl.
Yes, thank you. So we have a lot of different options available to our students today. A lot of parents are choosing to homeschool, and they have for several decades now. We also have charter schools and public schools, of course. And studies have shown that COVID does not really affect children under the age of 18, especially not in the young elementary school ages. And so we don't really need to be very concerned about these things, although some of the teachers I've spoken to, they have some concerns. But I think that things will continue to settle down. The testing, as we know, has been corrupted here in Florida and elsewhere in the world. And the rates are showing that they're higher than they actually are. So these are things that I think will clear up with time, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I don't think it's really going to be an issue at all.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Again, if you'd like me to repeat the question, I will. Next, we will hear from Mr. Acosta.
Could you actually repeat the question so I can hear the detail part of it?
What role would Congress take in working with states and the Federal Department of Education to make the public education system in America responsive to the changing needs of a 21st century economy and COVID-19?
Okay. From my perspective, it breaks down into sort of two different sections. I'm a professor at Palm Beach State College right now. So from the sort of high school and collegiate level, the big focus is on distance learning. And we have received some support in that. And we've been able to roll out a lot more online classes. That's going to be the future. And that's a good thing for accessibility. So continuing to support the rollout of online classes is a big deal for the higher levels. For lower levels is the problem. It's very difficult to do remote learning with first and second graders because you also have, that's an incumbency on the parents. They have to be home. It's a big fallout for families in particular. We need to look for ways that we can help lower middle schools and elementary schools with either after school programs where they're able to split up into smaller groups, or whether they're able to do days on and off, or hybrid programs where they do most of the teaching online and have some days where they have in-class experience. If they need extra funding to do the development of online sections or to physically have more teachers and hours available so they can make classes very small, that's what we have to support because their needs.
Time has ended, Mr. Acosta.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person we will hear from is Ms. Felton.
Hi, thank you. So nobody goes into teaching for the money. You know, they go in because they love kids, they love working with kids, they want to educate them. And the problem with having the federal government design everything is not all children learn the same way. I grew up in the public school system. I dealt with ADD and dyslexia. And, you know, square peg, round hole doesn't fit. Thank goodness my teachers were able to go outside the box. This is one of those things we need to give back to the states to design. We need to let our teachers who are actually in the classroom with our children and the parents get together on local levels and work out what works best for those kids. Otherwise, we're going to lose some of our brightest children who just learn differently by falling through the cracks. So my suggestion is that Congress stay out of it and we give education back to local government.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Now, Mr. Velarde may respond.
Could you please repeat the question?
What role should Congress take in working with states and the Federal Department of Education to make the public education system in America responsive to the changing needs of a 21st century economy and COVID-19?
Okay. With the role of Congress, as far as the states go, should have minimum requirements. I mean, what's happening today is our kids with the technology on their phones, they're getting away from the basics. They need to know how to read, they need to know how to write, and they need to know arithmetic. And there has to be some standard that they could, that the minimum standard where we know that our kids are coming out of school and they have an education where they can function in this society, so they're able to get a job and able to be literate in whatever they do. Now, the second part of that question, I believe, was regarding COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you wanted to know what the government maybe should have guidelines to make sure that the schools are giving the students a safe environment so that it does not spread out of control and infect our children as they're going to school. In certain places, I was in Florida and New York, my son had worked in a COVID hospital where it got so out of control, they went from 4 cases to 400 cases within a 30-day period of time.
I'm sorry, Mr. Velarde, you run out of time. Thank you very much. Moving on to our third question. Ms. Cheryl, you will be the first to respond. Statistics have revealed that Black women experience disparities in infertility rates, stigmatization, access to fertility's treatment, and care in the healthcare system as opposed to women of other races. What measures, if any, would you undertake to have better health care for all and have a meaningful impact to reduce these disparities?
Well, I tell you, one of the big problems with infertility would be when a woman has an abortion. And a lot of times when a woman has an abortion, they can no longer conceive a child. So number one, we need to stop the abortions. They're in these communities and they're encouraged to have these medical procedures, which ends the life of the child. And so that's the first step. Another would be to increase the nutrition of these women so that they have the optimal opportunity for their bodies to be at tip-top shape. We need to start educating children of all types in the school system how to grow organic food so that they can have the best nutrition available so their health is the best that it can be. Healthcare, as you know, is a huge thing for me, and we need to encourage wellness and approach it from a wellness perspective and prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Next to respond is Mr. Acosta.
Thank you. It's a very big issue. The disparity is there, but it's a big issue for all races as well. There's a ton of women who have difficulty conceiving, and we need to make sure that we have as much access to fertility services as possible in the different plans that we are either working to create or that we're trying to incentivize being created. I definitely think we need to make sure that services such as additional fertility services, in vitro, whatever the options are. I don't know the research behind solving the infertility, but I definitely know the things we can provide to help ease the situation. And I do think we also need to focus on really putting effort into making adoption also more accessible. We have a large number of children in this country that do need to be adopted, and the adoption system is so difficult that we almost make it impossible for a willing family to adopt. So we need to focus on all of those things. And I definitely think that if we have underserved communities, then we should put extra focus into making sure that they're getting the service they need from our medical facility practices.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta.
Thank you.
Ms. Felton, you may respond.
Could you just repeat the question? I want to make sure I understood what you said.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Statistics have revealed that Black women experience disparities in infertility rates, stigmatization, access to fertility treatments and care in the healthcare system, as opposed to women of other races. What measures, if any, would you undertake to have better healthcare for all and have a meaningful impact to reduce the disparities?
So this is one of those cases where I actually, not only is that the case, it's also, I also found out that Black women are not listened to by their doctors when they come in for labor and they're complaining of pain. They're kind of told it's not so bad, or we need patient advocates, and we need to get a way to let the Black community know how to ask for a patient advocate, because, you know, while you're not in the middle of crisis, in the middle of pain, when you're going for in vitro or fertility treatments. And it's important to have a advocate for that too. One step beyond, we need to make sure that Black women have, a grasp on how to get hold of a patient advocate. Because when you're in the middle of labor, you can't advocate for yourself. And it is an unbelievably unfortunate truth that Black women are not listened to when they're in labor and they're in pain. So across the board, I would say we need education for.
Ms. Felton, we have run out of time.
I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Velarde, you may respond.
Yes, please repeat the question.
Statistics have revealed that Black women experience disparities in infertility rates, stigmatization, access to fertility treatments, and care in the healthcare system as opposed to women of other races. What measures, if any, would you undertake to have better healthcare for all and have a meaningful impact to reduce these disparities?
I appreciate you asking me that question because I have a healthcare plan that's affordable for everybody. And I'm going to explain to you how it works. First of all, instead of taxing everybody like everyone else wants Medicare for all, I was an investigator, criminal investigator with the IRS. There's problems with that. I investigated that kind of fraud. My plan gives medical scholarships to the most qualified students. And the way we raise the money is by giving tax incentives to the wealthy. So Michael Bloomberg wants to give $1 million to tax to medical scholarships. We'll give him 100% tax deduction and a 2% tax credit. So he'll get $20,000 off his tax bill. We'll get $1 million to give to the most qualified students. We'll send the best people in medical school. They'll get a full boat. When they come out, they got to work for the state. Why the state? Because by working for the state, we eliminate the two biggest costs in healthcare. One is the medical biller, and secondly, the medical malpractice insurance. Now, anybody can have health insurance for $79 a month with a copay. Real simple. And that will help everybody. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Velarde. Lastly, Mr. Scanlon, you may respond.
Thank you. The biggest problem too is figuring out how this disparity is occurring. We need to ensure that everybody, regardless of race, regardless of creed or anything, gets the exact same treatment everywhere. That's including in our hospitals, in our doctor's offices, and with our health insurance programs. Our healthcare system is the greatest in the world. We have people from all over the world coming here to our country to get their healthcare and their major operations done. And those are even from people who have free healthcare in their own country. They come here for the procedures. Our problem here is the affordability. And our problem is that we need to make sure that I'm going to fight to continue to have medications, other prescriptions, and the manufacturing done here in the United States, bringing jobs back here, making the prescription drugs more affordable, and actually putting a cap on these health insurance companies and bringing them back to the table because some of them don't even want to negotiate with you. So we're going to have to end that part of it to really make a big jump in that. But ending the disparity is going to need to be figuring out how and why it's being there to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Your time is up. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the candidates. I don't see any questions from our audience. So we will move now into our closing statements. Remember, each of you have 1 minute for your closing remarks. Mr. Velarde, we'll start with you.
Thank you for this opportunity. We are a country in crisis, politically and socially divided. It is imperative to have a congressional representative who will bring unity and solutions. Without exceptions, my solutions aim to bring unity to Congress and our citizens. We all agree that it's unfair to our senior citizens to double tax their Social Security, and I will make sure it is tax exempt when I get there. I believe term limits will reduce political corruption in Washington, which is absolutely necessary. The unemployed need as much help as possible given this pandemic situation. And I will make sure that their tax benefits, that they will get, that their benefits will be tax-free. Because otherwise you have the IRS knocking on your door and they want $2,000 from you after you pay your bills, and these poor people just can't do it. We need health care for everybody. I have a great health care plan. If you go to my website, Velarde 2020, that's Velarde2020.com, it's all there. We need a fighter in Palm Beach who will serve our constituents and help people like you and I. Mike Velarde is the man for the job.
Thank you, Mr. Velarde. Ms. Felton?
I agree with Mike. We need peacemakers in Congress. I am a peacemaker. I'm somebody who can listen thoughtfully to people, even if I don't have the same view, and sometimes rethink my own views. I am not a career politician. There's no big money, and I will not be spending my days making phone calls for contributions to my campaign, because I'm going to do this exactly once and move over and let somebody else get in and do it. I am going to work very hard for all of my constituents, and my door will be open to all of you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Ms. Felton. Mr. Acosta?
Well, thank you again for having me on. The opportunity is much appreciated. My name is Christian Acosta. I'm running for District 21. And like I said, I'm actually from this district. I love this district. I grew up here. And really what I want to do is bring results for South Florida and for our Palm Beach County. The problem we have right now is it's too much politics. That's all you hear is national politics. How do we get things delivered for us? I want to make sure that we get more small business support. I want to bring more businesses here. Like I said, I'm a nuclear engineer. I'm also a professor. I can solve problems and help us get through the impasse in Washington and get delivered district results. I want to see our support for education increase. And I just really want to make sure that Palm Beach County feels like we're getting our fair share from Washington, because this is an amazing district. It's a vibrant district. It's very diverse. And I just want to make sure that we continue to enhance that and that we get the support we need. I'm going to have a district office right here in the county and probably right in Boynton Beach where I live. And I just want to make sure that you always feel that your representative values you and puts you first. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So give me a look at voteacosta.com, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta. Ms. Cheryl, we're ready to hear from you.
I invite everyone to scrutinize my platform. You can find it on rebaforcongress.com. I can't be intimidated. I can't be bought. I'm fighting for you. I'm a voice for the voiceless. I'm going to root out this fraud and corruption. We must defeat the tyranny that is going on in our country and around the world. We need to reopen America. How can we do this? Well, number one, we need to have our eyes wide open. We can't ignore the elephant in the room, such as pedophilia, child sex trafficking, drug trafficking. I have issued a 3-day call to prayer and fasting, August the 14th through the 17th, beginning in the evening and ending in the evening on Monday night. During this time, we need to seek God's face. We need to ask for forgiveness for the things that our country has done that has been tyrannical and has harmed many people. We need revival, restoration, and we need to reclaim our constitutional rights. I'm going to lead in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Lastly, Mr. Scanlon, we're ready to hear from you.
Thank you very much for having this forum and letting our voices be heard this way. I really appreciate it. As a veteran and a former police officer for the last almost 30 years, all I did was put my life on the line for this country and my communities. I'm going to continue to do that because nothing scares me. I don't back down from a fight. And what we need right now is we need somebody with experience in handling diverse situations, experience in handling people that really don't want to talk to you and don't want to work with you, but being able to get them to see the positive side and what's right for this country. As a hostage negotiator, that's all I did. As a police officer on the streets, that's all I did. Walking the beat, talking with people throughout the streets, that's all I've done. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have the skills that can get people to focus back on America and not the partisanship. The partisanship is over. We need to stick to America and what made America great and keep it that way. And I'm going to do that. electscanlon.com. I really appreciate your support and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon, and thank you to all of our candidates from District 21. Please note that none of the candidates for District 22 confirmed or were able to attend. I'm now going to turn it back over to Nelson to hear from the Democratic candidates vying for District 18 congressional seat. Nelson?
Thank you very much, Allyson. We will now begin with the Democratic candidates forum for District 18. This district consists of Martin and St. Lucie counties and the northern part of Palm Beach County. This district is located in southeastern Florida and includes Jupiter, Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, and Stewart. The candidates in attendance tonight are Pam Keith and Oz Vasquez. We will now start with opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. We will begin with Ms. Keith.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to the organizers for this fantastic event. My name is Pam Keith. I am a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I am so encouraged because we now face an unprecedented time in our history. The truth of the matter is that even though our country has been needing big systemic change for a very long time, big systemic change is not easy to do in any time, but most especially not when so many people are safe and comfortable. It is in those times of great distress, when people are very much unsettled, that we get the opportunity to make big changes. And we need those big changes. Every election cycle has its style, its ethos, and this one is very unique. First, our new Congress is going to have to restore the fundamentals of democracy. Currently, we have an occupant of the White House who has absolutely no respect whatsoever for the Constitution, the concept of democracy, and an entire political party that has embraced the idea that winning elections by suppressing the vote of the people who don't agree with you is an acceptable way to proceed. The next Congress is going to have to put a line in the sand and say, never again will we tolerate this concept of suppressing votes as a way to win elections. The next Congress is also going to have to take up an answer to one of the greatest challenges our country has ever faced in the coronavirus. That means telling the American people the truth. There is no shortcut. There is no easy answer. Even if we get a vaccine, it is several months off. We have to contain the virus through common sense, smart choices, and that is going to require a federal response. Not only that, we need people that are willing to stand in the gap, face down our challenges, give us solutions, and fight for what's right. I'm Pam Keith, and I'm excited to do that for you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keith. We turn to Mr. Vasquez.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the work you're doing. My name is Oz Vasquez, and I'm a Democrat running for representative of the 18th District. Because our community needs a representative who's looking out for them, not for a political party. That's perfectly true for working folks and folks on fixed income. Now, in my career, I put results first to fight for seniors and for working people. I went after bad actors who invested retirees' futures with Bernie Madoff. I worked for the state of Florida, fighting for a cleaner environment. And I know how hard people in the middle class and working class have it. People are being left behind. So I grew up in Port St. Lucie in a working class household myself. I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Social Security and Medicare. My mom worked in the garment industry, and as a home care worker, my dad drove a taxi. And when he had to stop driving for health reasons, we moved down here from Queens. I worked my way through high school and college. I've waited tables, I've washed dishes. I made it to Harvard Law School, and then I paid it back. I had the chance to live the American dream and have done my best to make sure that others have had that same chance. And I grew up here, I met my wife here, I got married here. This community gave me my family, and it deserves a representative who will do everything to give everybody else that same shot. That's why I've been endorsed by Representative Patrick Murphy, the most recent Democrat to hold this seat, by the Florida AFL-CIO, by Planned Parenthood Action Fund, by Democratic Environmental Caucus, and so many others in this community. And the stakes could not be higher. We're seeing record-breaking numbers of the coronavirus cases, deaths, hospitalizations, over 500,000 cases in Florida, almost 8,000 deaths, and 35,000 cases in Palm Beach. So we've been focused on what our community needs, and that is getting us through this crisis, making sure that we expand access to healthcare and reduce costs, protect healthcare, strengthen Social Security, Medicare, and protect the environment. I want my kids and your kids and grandkids to have the same chance to grow up in the Florida that my wife and I had. And that's what my campaign's about. We've been pointing out where Congressman Mast is no moderate. He even asked the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade, and certainly not pushed back on the Trump administration and the coronavirus response. We need solutions over politics. That's what we had with Congressman Murphy. That's why I'm so thrilled he's endorsed me. I will push back on anyone, regardless of party, who's not looking out for our community. And I will work as hard as possible for this community to make sure we get real solutions. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez. Let's turn to the questions. The same question will be asked of all the candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and there will be no rebuttal. Please wait for the timer to begin. before you start answering your question. For question one, we'll start with Mr. Vasquez. Congress has taken unprecedented actions to counter the economic impact of the novel coronavirus. Those actions included purchasing Treasury and mortgage-backed securities, encouraging the central bank to pump as much as $4 trillion into the economy, expanding unemployment benefits and paid sick leave, and providing low-interest loans to businesses. What actions should Congress take to help local governments and individuals and families that still suffer from the effects of COVID-19? You have 60 seconds to respond.
So I'm glad you asked that question. We are in a crisis and we have to get through the health aspects of it, but also the economic aspects of it. And I'm glad you asked about the work that can be done and should be done for helping communities to ensure that folks have jobs. I know what it's like for your family to be knocked off their feet. My dad drove a taxi and he had to stop driving for health reasons. And I know what it's like to be wondering what next calamity might come. So many folks in our community are going through that. We've had a video town hall on small businesses and how they're being affected. That means jobs. And so Congressman Mast had the opportunity to vote for the HEROES Act, which would plug some of the holes in the budget that states, counties are facing. And again, that means jobs, that means services, that means tax increases for folks that can't afford it. I've been endorsed by the AFL-CIO. I know what working people are going through. We need to make sure we are helping us get through the economic aspects of this crisis, extend unemployment. So many folks are facing eviction as well. The federal government has a role to play in ensuring that we are getting through this economically, but we can't forget the health aspects of it. We need trust in our public health to make sure we have the economy open back up again and ensure we're doing it the right way.
And thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Ms. Keith, your response.
The first problem that Floridians are facing is that even though there's been money passed for their assistance, they can't access it because our unemployment benefits system is a total debacle. It was designed to fail and it is failing thousands of Floridians. Congress and the people here in Florida need to work together for a workaround, an immediate workaround that gets people access to those $600 a week that they were supposed to get and have not gotten. That is problem number one. Number two, we obviously have to extend those benefits because people are not back to work and $275 a week is not going to be enough. We need dramatically more assistance. We need to have an absolute federal moratorium on evictions and foreclosures on mortgages. And we absolutely are going to have a jobs program and a bridge for healthcare because most of the people who are losing their employment are also losing their healthcare coverage and don't have the money for basic medications and doctor visits. So those are the things that are going to be immediate needs for Floridians right now. That's what I'm going to work on.
And thank you, Ms. Keith. We'll turn to question number two, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Keith. The Trump administration has deployed federal agents to local jurisdictions to confront peaceful protesters and to protect federal property. In 2016, President Trump pardoned 2 Oregon cattle ranchers whose sentence for arson on federal land sparked a standoff led by states' rights activist Amon Bundy. What is your position on these actions? Why does one situation deserve a pardon and the other deserve a federal response?
I mean, it's simple because Donald Trump only has one vision for justice, and that's who likes me and who doesn't like me. He doesn't care about the rule of law, never has. He doesn't care about the Constitution, never has. It's all about who's on Team Trump and who's not. And that's how he's manipulated our systems. That's how he's manipulated our institutions. And that's how he manipulates our military. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that I have served in the United States Navy and I have deployed overseas under the flag of the United States. I'm confronting a Republican in Brian Mast who wraps himself up in that very flag, but has absolutely no problem with its core concepts being trampled on by someone with 5 draft deferments that he bought because it was inconvenient for him to fight for his country. We've tried before to challenge Brian with people who haven't been veterans and have failed twice. We know that sometimes it takes the standing to have served yourself to confront someone who accuses others of being unpatriotic while he stands with a Russian partnering friend who allows Vladimir Putin to put bounties on the heads of our troops. That's a fight we need to have, and I'm the one to have it.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Mr. Vasquez, your response.
Bottom line, people have the right to protest peacefully. And I performed constitutional law. I was a constitutional lawyer for the state of Florida in the Attorney General's office. And I think it's outrageous for people the Trump administration to try to tamp down on peaceful protests, to use tear gas in Lafayette Square, in our temple of democracy, for a photo op. So of course, we need to make sure that we're protecting lives, protecting folks from looters and from rioters. But that's not what they're up to. They're up to photo ops and trying to make sure that they put a political message forward about law and order. And again, it should not be about serving a political party or serving a political agenda. It should be about ensuring that we have the right solutions. And those solutions include a government that respects the Constitution, a government that respects basic norms. We have, as citizens in the United States of America, the right to go out there and petition our government for something better. And the Trump administration is trampling on that right, and Congressman Mast has said nothing about it.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. For question 3, we'll start with you again, Mr. Vasquez. According to a 2020 report released by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the statistical agency of the U.S. Justice Department, in 2018, the imprisonment rate of Black males was 5.8 times that of white males, while the imprisonment rate of Black females was 1.8 times the rate of white females. Do you believe that we have an over-incarceration problem, particularly of Black men? And if so, what measure can Congress make to address and rectify the issue?
So I do believe that we have an over-incarceration problem, and I believe that it's part of a larger set of issues that we have to address. So I was in AmeriCorps Vista, did national service working out of the AME Zion Church, and we tried to tackle solutions on a number of fronts: housing, economic development, healthcare. But part of it is the school to prison pipeline issues where African Americans, Hispanics, different folks are treated differently. Part of it is overcriminalization. We have a criminal code in the federal system that we are still working to reform. We've addressed the crack cocaine disparity, but there's still so much to do. And we've seen the results of this overcriminalization, over-incarceration. We need to make sure we're fixing all of those issues. And we have an opportunity. People have seen that in the 21st century, it's completely unacceptable for African Americans, for minorities to die at the hands of police officers at rates higher than other communities. Congressman Mast voted against the Bipartisan Justice and Policing Act. We need better solutions, and I want to provide those solutions for our communities.
And thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Ms. Keith, your response to the question.
Solutions don't come by simply repeating what the problem is. Bottom line is this: our society, since the very beginning, has treated African Americans as if they're the ones to be contained, and the white community as if they're the ones to be served. That is a paradigmatic shift that needs to take place. It starts with how we hire police officers and what we task them with. Second, we have to train them to believe that they are just as responsible to honor and serve the Black community as they are to protect the white community. Third, we've got to stop hiring police that get discharged from previous police departments. We need a real system that tracks them and makes sure they're held accountable. We need to decouple the proximity of prosecutors and the fraternal order of police. We need to stop allowing police discipline to take place intramural without responsibility to the community. There are many things that we can do, but simply stating that we've had a problem is not the answer. You've got to start thinking solutions to get to the answer.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Next question. Both political parties agree that our immigration system is broken. How should Congress proceed on this issue to ensure that this country continues to welcome immigrants needed for various jobs, to ensure that individuals seeking a better life are not punished for the actions of businesses, and to ensure that children are not separated from their parents at the border in inhumane conditions? Ms. Keith, we'll begin with you.
We've got to push aside the notion that immigration is a question of stopping America from becoming more brown. That is the fundamental underpinning of much of the right-wing immigration talk. We have a huge problem with migrant labor that comes over illegally because we've never figured out a legal way for them to do that. We do not have a system in place that can fix it, but I have an idea. Why don't we allow them to come, register, get a little card, take a picture, let us track where you're going. Let us make sure that you're being treated all right. Every 6 months you renew. We know what companies are hiring you, and we are making sure that you are treated fairly. You come back, you renew. We are able to track you when you're here, track you when you leave, and you can earn a way to full citizenship if that's what you wish. We can undermine the illegal trafficking and the illegal crossing if we give them a legal way to do it that serves their purposes as well as our own. It's humanitarian-based policy, but it's also smart fiscal policy that takes xenophobia out of the mix.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Mr. Vasquez, your response to the question?
So this is a great area where I've actually been part of providing solutions. So I'm the son of immigrants, you know, my priors, but I've also worked for immigrants. I was actually on the border volunteering and working with unaccompanied minors in spring of last year. I've worked in pro bono representing and counseling folks seeking asylum, seeking help. And it's a complicated problem. So it's something that Congress can fix and has tried to fix, and that we have to work to make sure we fix. First, we need to make sure we have secure borders and enforcement. We need to make sure that we are protecting our borders, but we need to make sure we have a humane and comprehensive solution for folks that are already in this country, and that we're not limiting even legal immigration. That's something the Trump administration has done under the radar as much as possible, even using the cover of pandemic to stop folks seeking asylum, people who were fleeing violence, fleeing poverty, fleeing danger to themselves and their families. We need actual solutions, people who can listen, people who can work across the aisle to get us something better. It's been broken long enough, and it's time that we fix it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez. And we'll turn to our final question for this group. In your district, there have been significant issues with the quality of our waterways. What projects do you support, such as Lake Okeechobee restoration or Everglades restoration? And what role, if any, do you believe that the federal government has in addressing these issues in our community? Ms. Keith, we'll begin with you.
We have to have a completely different approach to what we need to do here, because there's billions of dollars in federal aid that is supposed to come and hasn't come. And that's largely because we don't get people to vote for it at budget time. And we've had Republicans representing us that don't believe in real environmental stewardship, especially when they have the keys to the kingdom. Brian Mast didn't ask Paul Ryan to fund our CERP. Now he asks Nancy Pelosi during a pandemic to do so. I'm going to pull together a team of Democrats who believe in environmental stewardship, a team of people who are going to come here and learn about our water issues. And together, we're going to back each other up to fund water projects, not just here, but across the country. The thing is, there's no such thing as just a local environmentalist. You either believe in environmental stewardship locally, nationally, and globally, or you do not, and Brian Mast most certainly does not. It's not just about where the water goes, it's about what goes in the water in the first place. And that takes a degree of courage of holding big agriculture accountable for the runoff and the pesticides that they use. My approach is different because it starts with actually wanting to fix the problem, and that's why we're going to fix it.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Mr. Vasquez.
So I firmly believe the environment is such a critical issue, and I think that we need to be better stewards of it. And I want my kids and everyone's kids to grow up in the same type of Florida that my wife and I did. I worked for the Attorney General's office. I worked on Florida, Georgia, case involving northern part of Florida, but it's complicated. You get to see how river systems are complex, how the legal systems are complex, and all of the levers that can be pulled. And there's so many that we can be pulling. Congressman Mast does take credit for the water. He has photo ops in front of the river. But he's never pushed back on the DeSantis administration, on the failures we've had in preventing pollution going into Lake Okeechobee. He takes credit for the work that other folks have done. And you're right, we need to fund the CERP, we need to work on the state-federal partnership. We need to make sure the EAA reservoir that project is completed and is effective and send water south. And we need to push back to make sure there are no discharges. But it's a larger picture, a larger issue. And again, the climate crisis, I agree on that as well. Congressman Mast ran for the job saying he believed in human-caused climate change. And that's a huge contributor to our blue-green algae problem. It's one of 3 main ingredients. He had the chance to vote the right way on the climate crisis. He voted the wrong way. We deserve better. We deserve solutions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez. We'll now finish up with our closing statements. Each of you will have 1 minute. We'll start with Mr. Vasquez.
thank you so much again for having me. And thank you again for providing this forum. And again, for all the work you're doing. We have so much at stake in this election. And we have so many folks that are suffering now from the coronavirus, from the economic fallout, people who are being squeezed. And we have to get through these crises and then make sure we tackle things like the climate crisis. We tackle things like the prescription drug crisis that are just around the corner and make sure we're ready for these next challenges as well. And what that requires is someone who is looking out for this district, who is willing to work with anyone, regardless of party, who is willing to push back on anyone, regardless of party, if it is in the interests of this community, my community, our community. And that's what we had with Congressman Murphy. That's why he won here by 20 points, because he was doing right by this community. That's why I'm thrilled to have his support. And that's why I think we can have it again. I would love to have your support. Please check out ozforcongress.com. There's so many issues we didn't even get to: protecting Social Security, Medicare, something near and dear to my heart, working folks. They're there. I'd love to speak with anyone, and I'd love to fight for this district to get the representation we deserve. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Ms. Keith, your closing statement.
We are not in 2012 or 2014 anymore. We're in a completely different America, and what's happening right now needs the leadership of right now. I have been endorsed by Senator Elizabeth Warren, Congresswoman Lois Frankel, Congressman Alcee Hastings, the Working Families Party, Vote Vets, Collective PAC, Higher Heights, and many others, because I bring attention to this district for this particular fight of this time. I am so proud that I'm bringing both parts of our party, the progressive side and the little bit more establishment side, together. And I bring to the table the energy, the background, the credibility, and the credential necessary to stand in the gap, face down Brian Mast, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump, and hold them accountable for the abuse to our Constitution that they are responsible for. Some of you may have seen me just this past weekend on MSNBC with a group of really exciting African-American women candidates. The whole country was riveted by what we bring to the table. And that's what we're gonna need if we're gonna get them to invest here and help us beat Brian Mast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez, Ms. Keith. Thank you very much for your time. I'm now going to turn it over to Allyson, and she's going to ask questions of the group of candidates who are vying for the District 20 seat.
Thank you, Nelson. We will now begin with our candidate for District 20. The Florida's 20th district contains portions of Broward and Palm Beach County and includes parts of Miramar, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. Geographically, the district is distinctive in that it includes both urban and rural areas. The candidate participating tonight from District 20 is Democrat candidate Sheila Sherpalis McCormick. We'll now start with our questions. Again, Ms. McCormick, you will have 2 minutes. You will have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's important that we get the opportunity to speak to the community, especially during COVID. It makes it extremely difficult to reach people and touch people and talk about what we're going through. So I thank you for this platform. As you mentioned, my name is Sheila Sherpalis McCormick. I grew up in this district. I've been raising my family in this district. I'm a mom, a wife, a lawyer, and a healthcare executive. I have my business in this district, and this district is really close to my heart. This is my home. It's our home, and we have to treat it as such and elect someone who can show up every time we need them. I went to Howard University for my undergraduate degree. I went to University of Maryland, where I was pursuing my master's of business administration, and I went to St. Thomas University School of Law. Once I graduated, I immediately went into healthcare regulation. It was during the time of the Affordable Health, and I was being the liaison in how to implement the regulations and also make sure the medical community is being reimbursed. But it's not my academic career. It's not me working as an executive at this time. For the last 10 years, I've been an executive. I've been advocating in DC also to different people in Congress about healthcare disparity. And it's not all these things that make me the most qualified person in the race. It's the things that I've been through that have built the tenacity right now. At this time, our country, our community desperately needs us. It's that. I was a single mother for 12 years raising a daughter with a healthcare learning disability. When I was in my last year of law class, It was me and the teachers who wrestled night and day trying to find resources. We did everything. I ended up having to take a year out of work to figure out the right resources. Soon I started speaking to more mothers in the neighborhood, and I found out that our children were being disproportionately diagnosed with mental disabilities and also learning disabilities. I immediately started fighting because to me, it's like something clicked inside where I could no longer just participate as a voter, and I turned into an advocate at that moment. That's what changed my life. And I've been there fighting for the last 10 years to end healthcare disparities. We spoke already what's going on with our families and how Black women are always being disproportionately affected when it comes to healthcare and maternal. But it takes more than that. I have a great experience in economic development as a healthcare executive. I've built created many jobs. We've also been able to create job skills for our community, especially when it comes to CNA, HHA. So my passion and my 3-point platform is healthcare first, to make sure that we're not only treating health.
Sorry, Mrs. Sherpalis McCormick, your time is up. Thank you very much for your opening statement. We'll go to your questions. And remember, you are allowed 1 minute to respond for your question. And please monitor the timer as you respond.
Okay.
The first question is, the death rates from COVID-19 have yet again shown the disparities in medical outcomes between minority and non-minority populations in this country. According to many studies, the Patient Protection and Affordability Care Act effectively reduced the racial and ethnic disparities in health coverage rates. Republicans, however, have fought to dismantle the act without providing any plan to replace it. Your question is, if you are elected, what steps would you take to reduce health disparities and outcomes in this country and ensure that America's healthcare system is accessible and affordable for working families, to include minorities, and for small businesses? You have 60 seconds to respond.
The first step is expanding Medicaid. We have to have Medicaid for all. And as we go forward, Medicaid for all is going to have to start with a healthcare portal, which is going to be directly towards the hot spot. Our district has been a hot spot twice in this pandemic. What that would look like is that people who aren't covered right now, especially the disparities lie in historically us not having jobs that give us healthcare. So a lot of us don't have healthcare. So the first step is actually having a portal, which is telemedicine. That with COVID, everybody has telemedicine. Doctor does it. So once we expand the funding for it, we can start transitioning people onto that. And that's going to help get everybody health insurance and start treating some of these comorbidities, such as high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and diabetes. So Medicaid for All is our first step, including telemedicine expansion in hotspots for COVID-19.
Thank you for that response. Your second question is a linked one, so I will go slow. Emma Friedel, an assistant professor at Florida State University, published a study in June 2020 that measured the impact of gun ownership rates and concealed carry laws in all 50 states. Her study included other factors that might influence mass shootings and homicide rates, such as unemployment, poverty levels, and mental health. The findings show that looser concealed carry laws had little impact on mass shootings. In fact, increased a state's gun homicide rate by 11% and resulted in a 53.5% increase in the likelihood of a mass shooting. Her study contradicts the common good guy with a gun argument espoused by many. Your question is, do you feel that gun restrictions cannot coexist with the Second Amendment? Do you believe Congress has a responsibility to reduce gun violence in Florida? And if so, what role should Congress play?
I believe that Congress has a primary responsibility to reduce gun violence, and that does include mental health and an economic development program. Many people who are creating crimes, they are not getting mental health, and that's why we have to expand Medicaid right now with the trauma facing, being unemployed, being subject to their abusers while being home every single day. That portal to make sure that we have mental health issues being addressed is important. Secondarily, the economic development plan has to include job skills training. Many people are resorting to violence and guns because they don't have the funding. And once we can get all these things together, we do have to restrict access. So it has to be a plan that Congress is putting forth, but we can no longer keep repeating the past arguments without taking actions. We need new ideas from people who know how to do it. And I'm strategically positioned for this to make sure that we're treating the community, especially the community that's always been disadvantaged, which is us.
Thank you so much, Mrs. McCormick. Your third question is, when considering the death of George Floyd, other lawful killings of Black Americans, and the Black Lives Matter movement, what systematic changes would you implement in police reform?
The first thing that I think us as a country and as every single candidate, we have to acknowledge that systematic racism and targeting of the Black and brown community does exist. We must. The second thing we must do, just like they do in any other industry that has had a high fraud or abuse, which policing right now has had a high rate of abuse. We must take a good look into it by auditing every single police department and law agency. Along with that audit, if we find have high rates of abuse reported, high rates of targeting, we must take action. These are the same steps that happen in healthcare. I've seen it as a lobbyist in healthcare, where if you're committing for an abuse, Congress steps in and they start putting in regulations and doing audits. We must transition to start doing that to our police officers and the police departments, because it's not all that are offenders, but we do know that systematic racism does exist in certain police departments, and we must put away with that kind of culture.
Thank you so much. We'll now turn to our audience for questions, and we do have one question from our audience. What are your views on term limits for Congress?
I definitely believe in term limits. I do not believe that the seat was ever intended to be a lifetime appointment like the Supreme Court. You know, Congress has always been, well, the House of Representatives has been 2 years, so we can have fresh new ideas constantly stimulating through. And we have to also rethink the seniority idea. Seniority, we have seen, does not equate effectiveness, because we have new freshman members who are in Congress who are now putting forth bills and getting senior members to sign on to it. And that's what we're even seeing in our district. The present congressman hasn't passed a bill in 10 years. Not only that, freshman members now, he's signing on to it. Onto them. So what it means is that Congress really needs fresh ideas, people who can fight it, who have the specialized knowledge, know what the people are going through, and can advocate and fight with them, fight for them.
Thank you so much for that response. I don't see any other questions from our audience. We'll move now to your closing.
Well, once again, my name is Sheila Sherpalis Mccormick. I know it's a handful to hear my name, so I always repeat it. It's Sherpalis Mccormick, and I thank you so much for having me here today. And I just want to remind everybody that this election is imperative. Our community is not only fighting for its health and survival, it's not only fighting for its economic development, it's not only fighting for its small businesses, but we are fighting for our lives and our legacy. We must take this seriously. We cannot go forward doing the same things we did in the past. This is not the time for us to be recycling the past. This is the time where we must take our spot in history and do our generation's work. Our generation's work is to finally put an end to economic inequality, to finally put an end to healthcare disparities, and to finally make sure that we uphold what we say as a country, that everyone is created equal. And systematic racism, systematic discrimination must come to an end, but it comes with us. With District 20. District 20 has the largest amount of minorities of anybody who's been on here. We have to take that power and that control. Everyone, this is a unilateral, this is everyone who's involved who needs to be. If we're Americans and we believe in this, we must fight together. Please, on August 18th, even now with early voting, turn in your ballots. Turn in your ballots. Consider me as your candidate. I show up. As you can see today, I'm the only one who shows up. I've did several debates, and I've been consistently showing up. We've given out more than 5,000 hot plates of food to families. We've given out over 10,000 masks, and I'll continue fighting.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherpalis McCormick. Your time has ended for that question, for your closing remarks. I'd like to say to all of our candidates, thank you for being with us. Thank you for those who are seeking re-election. We thank you for your service. And for those of you who are seeking to hold these congressional seats for the first time, thank you for your willingness to serve. I'd like to also have show you a special thank you for those that are working in front of and behind the scenes. They have diligently work to bring these forums to you so that you may be more informed, better educated voters. Thank you, Nelson, for sharing this evening with me as a co-moderator. And I will now turn it over to you for your final remarks.
Thank you very much, Allyson. And thank you to the audience for attending tonight's forum and all of the When We All Vote primary election candidates forum. As we close, I want to remind everyone that early voting for August 18th primary elections ends on August the 16th. Also, you have until August the 8th to request your mail-in ballot. For your voice to be heard, you must vote. On August the 18th and on November the 3rd, speak loudly. Thank you and stay safe.